we are going to look into the IBM Security QRadar SIEM. So here I have my trainer's profile. I'm a subject matter expert of cybersecurity and I'm having expertise in cybersecurity, SIEM, AWS, IAM, and I'm having an experience of 3 years. The course curriculum, we are going to cover some modules of the QRadar SIEM, like the introduction to the SIEM, and we have the key concepts, the capabilities of high-level architecture, then the proper SIEM, that is the security, intelligence, and event management. Moving forward to the module 2, that is the architecture of SIEM, in which we are going to cover that how all appliances are working in a QRadar appliance. So we have a collectors, we have a processors, we have a flow collectors, we have a flow processors, that how all communications are going to come from one device to another device, and that is being captured by the IBM QRadar, and we can use it for the further investigations and the forensic. So basically the main agenda of this course is to learn about that how cybercrime department is using these kind of enterprise tools in today's life, how we can navigate these all things to perform the task in SOC domain. Basically the SOC domain is security operations centers, so in which all the security personalities are going to be seated in and arranged proper team to handle each and every incident. Then we have a log collection. So basically whenever you place any activity onto your system, so just take an example, if you have authentication phase, once you open your Windows operating system, so at that time you have reset your username and the password, and that phase is your authentication phase. But at the back end it will create a log for that. Whenever you enter your correct username and the password, we call it credentials. So in that case they will create a syslog. We call it a system log. That system log is just a record of that particular activity you have performed. So in that case, those all information from any device, it can be a router, it can be a firewall, it can be a switch, it can be an intrusion detection system, it can be an intrusion prevention system, or it can be any device that we are using, or we can say that is connected with the OSI and the TCP model over the internet. So all those things creates their own syslog with the different syntaxes, and all those things are going to be collected by the IBM QRadar. Like for the win collect means for the Windows syslog. Then we have a syslog method for the Linux, or we have a different operating system syslog. Then we have a log source creation and management over there. Now what is a log source creation and management? So in this we will cover that how we can connect our QRadar with the multiple devices. Now the next, moving forward to the module 4, here we have the QRadar console management, in which we are going to look into the dashboards, type of the dashboards, and the dashboard customization. So this is a totally practical base, but we have a little bit theory with it also. Next is our log activity. So in the log activity, we are going to look at how our raw events are going to be converted into a normalized event. So now difference between the raw events and the normalized events are, whenever any end device, for example, any workstation sends their log information to the QRadar, that thing is into the non-readable form, that we call it a raw data. Okay, now raw data is going to be converted by DSMs. Here we have the DSMs. So those DSMs are responsible to convert that raw data into the readable form, and we are going to look that data into this log activity tab. So this is the part of IBM QRadar. So I will show you here we have some filters, that how we can view those filters. Okay, so whenever you search on any website, for example Amazon or we can say Flipkart, so at that time what we are doing, we are applying some sort of a filter. If you're going to purchase a smartphone, so in that case you apply a filter that I want a smartphone with the 12 GB of RAM. Okay, this type of GPU is inbuilt in there. So those all are the configurations. So you can create your own criteria, and in this we can create the criteria and we can save the criteria there. Now the next thing is the very important in the SOC domains. We call it a false positive and its tune. So false positive is basically occurs due to the human error. So whenever you configure your QRadar domain, in that case, whenever you upload any configuration onto the QRadar. So for example, there is a Cisco domain that is working onto your organization. So in that case, if you deploy the QRadar over there, then you have to deploy the configuration of the Cisco network to the QRadar itself. Then in that case, if you enter any wrong values, any wrong values, if you enter at that time, that can create a false positive situation in the future, and it will impact to investigate, and it will result to a false information. That next is activity. Okay, that is a module 6. So network activity is basically a communication between two devices. So first was a activity. That activity can be a offline activity as well. But in network activity, when two devices can be anything. For if a router is communicating with router, that is network activity. When any workstation is communicating with the server is communicating with the database is responding to the user. So these all are the network activities. So in this, what we can do, we can integrate multiple things. We can sniff the actual captured data. For example, if you send a message from one machine to the second machine, that message is high, or it can be a ping ICMP code that may be 120 or anything. So those things are going to be displayed into this network activity tab. So I have a proper demonstration on that for the IBM QRadar dashboard and the user interface. So I will show you that. So again, the same criteria and the searches parameters are there. As per your requirements, you can search it and create the criteria, and you can save those criteria as well for the future frequent processes. Okay, and again, false positive and tuning is there. Now the next thing is the seventh module. It's a very interesting module, and we can say this is the main module of the SOC analyst, that is the offensive rules and reports. So whenever we talk about the security domain, we are dealing with the incident in the daily life. Now if we are talking about the MX card, so that MX card is certified with the PCI DSS compliance standard. PCI DSS means Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So they have to follow some procedures in the guidelines. So in that rules, they have to mention some sort of rules which is accepted by IBM, Splunk, Red Eye, all of those companies who are providing the testing solution. So they have to share the rules with itself also. So for there we have the proper regulatory compliance standard, and we have to share our organization report to them, because that is a proper regulatory compliance. So in that reporting, we have to create a report on the manually basis and the automatically basis. Like in every hour your report is going to be generated. In every day your report is going to be generated. For example, if your organization, just example, if MX is there, so in that case, in every hour they are going to generate an audit report that how many transactions got successful, how many transactions got failed. So this is a total, a sum of the transactions. So with this, they will compare that which company is going good and which company is having a bad impact on the payment situation. Okay, so these all things are we are going to look into it. So there we have one more main module, that is offense management. How we are going to investigate any offense. Offense means if anyone violate the policy, it can be insider. If it is a parameter of a QRadar, for example, if in your organization QRadar is deployed and the attacker is from your company, so we will call it a insider. Okay, and that insider, how we are going to investigate that thing? With the help of the offense management, we can reach to that endpoint from where attack was started. So this is how we are going to work on this QRadar node. Okay, rules and the building blocks are just simple things, and we can create a complex rule with the binding each of them with building blocks and the different rules available into the QRadar. Next is the report management. Report management is always discussed. Here we have in module 8 is assets and vulnerability assessment. So assets means whenever your organization install any new workstation, any new database, any new servers, so those all machines are treated as an asset. So you have to keep a record into the QRadar. It's just like a directory in which you will keep a record of their IP addresses, their MAC addresses, okay, then their net BIOS name, their host name, the username they are using, and then we have which operating system is there, what is the ownership. All those things are going to be listed into that. Okay, this is for just the identity purpose. Then we have a vulnerability assessment on all those devices which are a part of IBM QRadar domain. Not the remote machines are going to be scanned, only local machines are going to be scanned with this vulnerability assessment. We call it VA. Now this VA means vulnerability assessment of your assets. So they are going to scan your machines and they will create a proper risk score, that how much risk is on your machine and how much potential damage can be made on your machine in the future. So this is the main thing in the vulnerability assessment. Next in here we have a risk management. So in the risk management we will look into how your network part is vulnerable. So there we are looking at the machine is vulnerable. Here we are looking at which network part is vulnerable. And in last we have admin, and in admin we can change the configuration of QRadar as per our requirement. Okay, so there are different requirements. So we can change our requirement as per my organization needs. Module number 10 then is our backup. So types of backup, how we can backup, how we can create the backup policies. So for example, if any incident occurs, so how your resilience is decided. So this is the main thing that we decide into our backup, that how we are going to recover when every pre or post attack will happen. That is the main thing, because we have to respond to our users, because the users are not going to use the QRadar. Our organizations are using the QRadar, and organization will provide service with help of the QRadar, and they will give you proper results to the users for the good market. Okay, so backup is mandatory for all. Next, moving to the QRadar in advance. So this is a driven module of the previous that we have discussed, in which we have the first of all the architecture, in which we have HLA, that is a high level architecture, that how all things are combined, like we have discussed about the collectors, processors. So I'll show you into the diagram that how all these devices are connected into the next slide. Then we have a flow collector architecture. So flow collectors are for the network activities. So the data is going to be reflected into the network activities is being collected by your flow collectors and flow process. Next is your event collectors. So event collectors, when any system create any activity or any activity occurs on the machine, it will be collected by the event collector. Next is your event processor. So event processor will help. Okay, so processor, we all know what is the meaning of a processor. So the same functionality as we have already discussed about the DSMs. A low level, not a low level, a raw data is going to be converted into a normalized data. So this functionality is going to be helping to our processors. Side by side, there is a fraud-based rule is going to be detected. We call it a CRE. That is a custom rule engine in which we can create our own rule. Console architecture. So in console architecture, we have a magistrate portion over there who is responsible to declare an offense. If any suspicious or malicious activities occur, so that will be indicated into that offense, and that offense is declared into the QRadar by the magistrate, which is a part of console architecture. And in last, we have a data storage technology, that how our data is going to be stored into a different buckets. So in QRadar, we have a different buckets. So there are, including the shared bucket, we have total 20 buckets. Okay, so we cannot increase the number of bucket size, and we can arrange our data by applying some filters on that. Like if we want to install the data of US in the bucket 1, European region in the bucket 2, Asian region in the bucket 3. So all those data is going to be reflected into that. Now the next is the solution implementation, and in this we have a QRadar solution scope. Okay, so in this we are going to create a different reports. Okay, so we will tell you that how you are going to navigate all of the QRadar, how we can troubleshoot the QRadar. Then we have proper report activity. Okay, log activity and report development step, that how we can develop our report as well. In a basic QRadar, we have more than 1841 report templates. So those are the predefined. For example, if your organization is following a regulatory compliance standard of a PCI DSS, so if you want that predefined PCI DSS report is must be in your system, so that functionality is already in the QRadar, so that will be helpful for you. But if you want to create your own template, so that functionality is also there, so you can create your own report templates as well. And then next we have create a network hierarchy. So the network hierarchy is just like as I told you, when you combine your Cisco network with the QRadar domain and all. So in that case, we have to take care of this main portion, that is your network hierarchy. If this thing is not properly arranged, properly configured, in that case, your system or maybe your machine will show you some sort of a false positive information. Remember, we have discussed it earlier. Okay, so that's why this is the main reason. If you enter a wrong value into this network hierarchy, that can lead you to the false positive information. Next is your configuration authentication. Configuring your authentication. So in this, what we can do, we have a proper user management. Now we all know the top functionality of a single person. So there we have a proper team. For example, 20 to 25 users. There will be only one QRadar, but that one QRadar is going to be used by those all 25 users. So for that, we can create the user with their privileges. So that what provisions you want to add in into multiple accounts. Okay, maybe some are blue team persons, some are red team persons, some are pet hunters. All those things are going to be configured by a super admin. Now that admin will be a stock manager. So next is custom log sources. So in this custom log sources, what we will do, we will use the IBM QRadar Community Edition. So in that community edition, we will connect CentOS 7.5 with the QRadar community edition, that is a 7.3.3. And then there is a proper use of your DSM editor. We will create that thing in practical sessions also. Next is mapping your unlog log records, because we have to normalize all those things. So this is a proper functionality of a DSM. Let me correct you. DSM is device support module. So for each device normalization, we have a dedicated DSM for the QRadar. Okay, for example, if two domains are working, operating systems are working into your organization, that is Windows and Linux. So at that case, two DSMs are working for the normalizations of the Windows and the Linux log. Now the next is creating an appropriate regular expression. So we can create a multiple expressions over the AQLs. Regex are there. So these all are the patterns that we can use into our admin tab for the configuring multiple things. Then we have a QIDs. So QIDs are for, rule based. Okay, so this is also a proper topic on that, how QIDs are working. So QIDs is basically your QRadar identities. If any activity, for example, you are using your college website or your organization website and you are authenticating on that website. So in that case, the QID will same for all. If someone successfully authenticated on your website, so for that QID will same for all those who are authenticating, or authentication is getting successful. So authentication phase for all those QIDs same. Okay, so this is, you can say this is all are the index numbers. So mapping the log source ID to the custom QIDs. So you can create the custom QIDs and you can map the log sources. So we can arrange up to 900,000, 9,900, nearly 1 million log source with my QRadar. Okay, so we can configure nearly 1 million log sources with our QRadar. Next is module number 4, rule creation and fine tuning. As we already discussed that we can create a rule. So first of all, we have a QRadar rule and we have a building block. So QRadar rules plus building blocks can create a complex to complex tool. It's just based on the condition that how you are going to find the anomalies in your organization. Okay, so that is all on you, that what type of rules you want to detect. If you want to create a rule for the authentication fail system, for example, if someone fails an authentication 5 times within 30 seconds, so for that offense has to be generated. So you can create a rule like that. Okay, so if someone violates that policy, definitely your offense is going to be generated and that username is going to be reflected into the query that yes, this personality was using this machine, this was the time, this was the log source, so all things will be going to be reflected into the QRadar. And then as we already discussed about the offense analysis, that we are going to look into the proper, offense summary. Next is the false positive, using the time series and the anomaly rules. So in the time series and the anomaly rules, basically we are using the index management and the aggregated data. So aggregated data means your historical data that is going to be correlated to your historical data, means your old data, your data, we can say last 2 years data, last 1 year data, and they will find anomalies on that. It can be a threshold based, it can be a anomaly based, or it can be a change in a behavior based. So those all things are going to be happen automatically. Okay, and again, magistrate will generate the offense for that. Next is false positive management. So you have to tune all the false positive into your organization. So for that, we have a false positive management there, where we have the properties and the direction, the traffic directions of a false positive. That what traffic directions or what exceptions you want to create for this particular rule. Okay, means if there is a testing team, they are working on the testing of your network securities. So in that case, if you find that your offense is getting generated, but you know why, because your admin is working on that. So for that, you can create exception for your admin. So this is also a functionality of a false positive tuning, which is a part of a false positive management. Next is tuning methodology. So how you can tuning methodology, as I already told you, we have to select a proper traffic direction and we have to select a proper properties of that which thing you want to allow. Next is QRadar reports. So in QRadar reports, we have creating of a QRadar SIEM report. Okay, in SIEM reports, I already told you there are 841 report templates which is already installed into the QRadar. Okay, so in community edition, there are not total number of 841, but we can create our own templates over there. Next is the report introduction. So reporting introduction, I will tell you that how your manual reporting will work and how your automatic reportings are going to work. means there is a proper terminology that how your weekly reports will generate, at what stage your report is going to be generated. It is not like that if you give a command to generate a report of every week and that command was given on the Friday. So you don't think that you will get a report of the last 7 days on the Monday, on the coming Monday. So you have to wait. So we will discuss in our when we are going to learn about it about this topic in deep. Okay, then we have a advanced filtering scenario. So we can add a different filters. Okay, and we have more functionalities, like we can group it to create any filter. So you can group it for your optimizations. Now next is module 6 is introduction to the AQL. Now AQL is the aerial query language which works on the aerial database, which is connected with event processor, which connects with event processor and the flow processor. So if you want to fetch some details of your event and flow, means the log activity information and the network activity information. So for that you have some more information. You have one more criteria to search that thing. If for example, if that thing is not available into your filter option, so you can write a proper AQL command for that. It's similar to the SQL. Okay, so you can use that thing also. Now moving forward, introduction to the, so basically in introduction I'll show you that how SIEM are working. So here we have a QRadar machine which is deployed. Now in this we have proper offense management, we have a log activity, we have a network activity. So all things are there. So this is a basic functionality of a SIEM. So if you want to integrate a different machine, so you can integrate that. Now in the meaning of the different machines, like if you want to integrate the risk management, so you can integrate that thing also. If you want to integrate vulnerability management, so you can install that thing also. But the basic will be a SIEM. Now the basic functionality of SIEM is they are going to fetch your logs from the various machines. So here we have the all of the tabs. We have a dashboard, we have offenses, okay, we have a log activity, then we have a network activity. Next we have a assets. Assets are the records that we can maintain with their IP addresses, assets name, operating system, the aggregated CVSS. CVSS means common vulnerability scoring system. Next is the number of vulnerabilities, which services are working over there, who was the last user who was working there, and what was the last scene. It means the last login time on that particular machine. Here we have the report tab. So in this report tab, we have how we can create our different rules. So as you all can see, we have different number of reports over there already deployed. So these all are the inactive. So inactive means they are not generating automatically. Now in here we have one more option that is a branding. So you can brand your reports also. This is a default PNG that is of the QRadar branding itself. Next is here we have a vulnerability management. So in this we can find the vulnerabilities of systems by just using the scan policies. So we have a full scan policy, we have a quick scan policy, we have a patch scan policy. So those all are things that we can use for the asset vulnerability scan. And in last, we have a admin console in which we can change the configuration of auto update, backup and recovery, index management, your aggregated data management. We have discussed about this, like your historical data and all. Then we have network hierarchy, system and license management, how we can apply a license. So this is also a good topic for you all. The various things are there to learn in this QRadar portion. So next is we have a daily volume of events and flows, like we have up to 2 billions of events and flows on a daily basis. Like if you're talking about a merchant which is in India available, we call it a Paytm. So in Paytm there is a minimum 60 lakh transaction in a single day. So now that 60 lakh transactions are 60 lakh events are made on a single device. Whenever you open your app, you will find some sort of a logos of a different companies like American Safety, Norton 360, McAfee. So these all are the surveillance, regulatory surveillance. They want you to keep an eye on that device when they are using your application only, because for that you are authorized that what activities they are doing onto your app. For example, if you're making a transaction from one user to another user, that app will be recorded into this IBM QRadar asset. And then we have dedicated SOC team for that. Now SOC we have already discussed, that is Security Operations Center team, or we can say Security Operation Control team. So this is the architecture of a QRadar, how all the QRadar are working. So we have a different collectors on working on the bottom. We have a flow collector, we have a event collector. So they will receive a data from the multiple sources. Or the sources mean this is a QRadar architecture. Now whenever a QRadar is connected with any machine, these two collectors are connected with that. This connection is made on the logical phase. So basically they are connected with the Ethernet and all, or maybe they can be connected with the Wi-Fi as well. So they will receive an information. Now that information is your logs. Log, if that is an activity, it will come into this event collector. If that is network communication information, so that will be received by this flow collector. So once they will receive by these both collectors, they will normalize it and send it to the processor. Processor will save that data. First of all, they will archive it, okay, then they will save that data into this. Now this thing over here is where they have written flows, events and accumulations. This is aerial database. So archive data cannot be changed. So we call it a tamper-proof data. So processors are responsible to make that data tamper-proof. So we can say we can send data from collectors to this processor in a more secure way with the help of a TLS security, that is a transport layer security. So once your data is received by the processor, they will save that into this aerial database by archiving it. And there we have the CREs as well, which is a custom rule engine. They will send an information of a suspicious log to the next level, that is your console service. So in this console services, we have our user interface, which is our web portal, which I have already shown to you. Then we have a magistrate. In this magistrate, I told you that the magistrate, the major functionality of a magistrate is to declare an offense. Next is the reporting. So reporting is for the audit purposes. So you have to create a reporting. So you have to create a report for every change into the configuration. Next is the last database, that is a Postgre database. In that Postgre database, we have stored the identities. Now identities and assets are the same. Now identities are a part of the assets. Next is offenses. So if any offense occurs, so that thing is not going to be stored into the aerial database, that thing is going to be stored into that Postgre database. So this is the how all the configuration are working. This is the basic architecture of the QRadar. Now the core technology in the market, scope of the technology, insights in the market trend. So for that, I will tell you that there are huge scope in that market, because in the daily life we have a number of transactions happening on our internet, totally dependent on the internet because of the online learning. Majorly our operational technologies organizations are now using the IT security infrastructure. Okay, so now that thing can be, for example, if you are talking about the power grid, we are talking about the dam, so they all are using the IoT services. Now that IoT devices are using the properties of OSI and the TCP/IP model, which is now connected with the cyber world. Now that cyber world has to be secure, so that's why we have a huge scope in the market. So basically we have in the market trend, we already view into that, like we have a data analyst, we have a data scientist. So we all know that the cyber security, now the cyber security is the defensive phase, so we cannot approach directly to the offensive phase. First of all, you have to learn about the defensive, then you can go to the offensive. So let me clear you one thing. If you are learning about the offensive security first before the defensive security, that is very hard to get a job in that. We don't know what is the proper roadmap to get a job. So here we are to give you a proper roadmap that how you can get a job into this field. So for that, you have to learn these kind of tools which is used into an enterprise organization. So this is how we can earn more than, average pay scale, like $100,000. So for that, we have a good jobs available into the market. The basic requirement for those is the certification, which is written over here. That is the IBM Security Intelligence Engineering, and next we have a IBM Certified SOC Analyst. In the basic stage, mainly this is for the scope. So in the basic stage, we have a three type of SOC analyst. We have SOC L1, we have SOC L2, we have SOC L3. SOC layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So layer 1 is for the monitoring purposes. So whenever you're going to hire, you will work for at least 1 year as a monitoring services, because you have to know about that how actually these all SIEMs are working in an particular organization. And the L2, you will become a incident responder. So that incident responder is responsible to investigate or to create a proper analysis on an offense with the proper investigations and the forensics precautions. And the last is the L3, which are the threat hunters. So threat hunters are having a different properties rather than the L1 and L2. So they are working the proactively. If you want a job in L3 for L3 stock analyst, so for that you need a minimum experience of 6 to 7 years. So this is how your certification roadmap is here. Now the next is the project that will be demonstrated. So we can develop a project with the IBM QRadar Community Edition. We can integrate the one more module, that is the IBM X-Force Exchange integration. So we can integrate the IBM X-Force information into our IBM Community Edition. So we have a portability, compatibilities in this IBM QRadar Community Edition, so we can add anything into it for the proactive approach. So we can say this is tool is going to be used. So basic tool QRadar SIEM is going to be used with the used by L1 and L2s only. How L3s are working? So basically L3s are using AI/ML power tools. They want the AI/ML power with the full automation tools. So for there we have a X-Force Exchange integration. So the system requirements for that is the 16 GB RAM is required. Then we have a minimum. So this is a minimum requirement for your CPU, that is quad-core processor with a minimum Intel Core i5. Generation can be anything, and user must have VMware Workstation Pro 14. Okay, then we have a proper scenario of a Windows connecting with the Linux and how we can send a logs of Windows to the IBM QRadar, how we can send a log from Linux to the IBM QRadar. So IBM QRadar is not an operating system. It's a software which is installed into the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So we have to install that package into our VMwares. So after this project, user will understand how SOC domains are working proactively. So as I already told you, so the proactive approach is going to be handled by L3 persons. Those are the incident responders and the threat hunters. They are using the IBM X-Force integration. So in that particular project we will look into it. Next is project log analysis with IBM QRadar. So we can use the log analysis properly with the IBM QRadar by creating a scenario of an attack. We can use that thing for QRadar investigations in the forensic phase, in which we can create a multiple rules, and from the another means we will violate that rules, and we will look into our QRadar that how your QRadar machines is responding to us. Okay, and we will configure some sort of a false positing by giving some changes into the network hierarchy. So the system requirement for this is 16 GBs of RAM. Again, everything is same, but for this basically the major functionality for this project is, so for this we are not going to learn about that how tier 3 means your L3 SOC analysts are working. This is for the SOC 1 and SOC 2. SOC tier 1 and SOC tier 2. Okay, so the lab setup is already there with you all. So the minimum requirement is 16 GBs of RAM. If it is a 32, then it will be a fine. But minimum recommended is 16 GBs of RAM. Then we want any Windows OS. So any Windows OS is like minimum Windows 7 up to Windows 8, 8.1, 10. It can be Windows Server 2008 R2, it can be Windows Server 2012 R2, Windows Server 2016 R2. Then we have a CentOS. So for CentOS, which operating system we are going to use the CentOS is 7.5 1804 minimal edition. So not 100 GB of hard disk is required. Actually, we require minimum 200 GB for the QRadar, and we have to give some hard disk to the Windows and the CentOS operating system as well. So minimum 250 GB hard disk is required. Storage space, it can be SSD. If it is SSD, then it will be good. It will help us with the installation phase on the VMware. So we will provide you a OVS for that, with which it is very frequent process to install the IBM QRadar. But for that, the prerequisites are your networking and about your operating system skills. Okay, then we have troubleshooting skills, and the main thing in this field is the patience. So these are some additional course resources in which we have some information about security intelligence analytics, threat hunting, and the incident response. So I think we are pretty much clear. So thanks for the session.